If you've been around these parts before, you probably noticed that I have not just one, but 2, 3, and 4 Pokemon on the screen at any given time. Now, obviously, this is a bit more of a sports-focused channel, and I think it's time that I finally put the knowledge I have of both of these to use, kind of combine them. If you know what Pokemon Showdown is, it's a battle simulator for Pokemon. It's free online, anybody can play it. It's not the raising the Pokemon side of it, it's strictly battling. You make your team, you pick your movesets and everything, and you battle. The most popular game mode of which is something called randoms, and for every new generation of Pokemon, there is a new generation of randoms and a meta that forms around that. And let me tell you, between the last 3 generations, I probably have like 4,000 plus random battles. So it's such a significant portion of my brain is filled with something that I've almost never truly put to use outside of 15-minute breaks at a time online, that I think it's finally the time that I put this knowledge to use. So today I want to look at the NBA, and I'll extend it a little bit to other professional sports leagues, but predominantly today I'm going to be looking at the NBA, and what would the NBA be like if it was a bit more like competitive Pokemon? Now, obviously, we got to do some background here. There's 2 sides of this coin. There's the NBA side and there's the Pokemon side. I'm going to guess if you're watching this video, you probably have a pretty good idea of what NBA basketball is. You probably have a decent idea of some of the bigger names in the league and maybe a general idea of some history of the league. But there's a good chance you have no clue how Pokemon works, especially competitive Pokemon. Now, as anything goes that's been around for 20, 30 some years, competitive Pokemon is much deeper and much more complex than I'm going to get into in this video, but I'm going to give you sort of a baseline idea so we can work at the same level going forward. In the game of Pokemon have a very wide range of abilities, of skills, of overall power that would essentially make it so that any of the really weak Pokemon would rarely, if ever, see play in the higher tiers of competitive play. Because of this, Pokemon has long time been set up into a few tiers, mainly being OU, meaning overused, UU, meaning underused, NU, meaning never used, recently added PU, which is partially used, and ZU, which pretty much means zero usage. So the most important thing to know about these tiers is essentially the most powerful and best in-battle Pokemon will be at the OU tier, and then going down from there, the power level decreases with it. However, there is one tier above OU, and that is essentially the ban list called Ubers. In Ubers, you're going to find a lot of your legendary Pokemon, your mythical Pokemon, a lot of Pokemon that simply are too strong to be allowed in the general competitive scene. Pokemon like Mewtwo, who from the very first generation has been banned to Ubers because it is that good. Pokemon like Rayquaza, Pokemon like Primal Groudon and Kyogre, the Zacian and Zamazenta pair. What's the deer called? What's the deer called? It's Xerneas. I actually couldn't remember that. So Ubers is pretty much a catch-all for the Pokemon that are so strong that they need to be relegated to their own space. Like, these are the kids who got a little too many second servings. They're a little too big for the rest of the grade. So we're gonna let them play football on their own field, and the rest of the kids are gonna be, doing their own thing so they don't get hurt. I'm sure you're thinking, Zach, what the hell's going on? How are we gonna combine these 2 things? Ubers isn't like the professional level because those guys haven't been banned. Those are the most celebrated guys. So it's not like they're the top tier, but there's nobody above them. So they can't be OU because they're not the top. So what are we going to do about that? Well, luckily, because this is my video, I thought through that conundrum, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to look at the NBA as if it were competitive Pokemon. As is with tiering in Pokemon, it's important to look at the level of players that we're going to be working with here today. What guys are truly going to be good enough to be OU? What guys aren't going to be quite hitting that cut being your UU? And then from there on, and what guys are going to get banned to Ubers. I think a good way to initially think of this is Anybody who's an all-star caliber player is essentially going to be your OU level player. Your Paul Georges, your Kawhi Leonards, your Donovan Mitchells. These are guys that if they could be on any team in the league, that team would be made better because they have them. And other teams in the league would be worse off since they cannot field that same guy at that position. I frame it like that because in Pokemon, anybody can use any Pokemon. There's no restrictions like, there's not just one Alakazam to use for everybody competing. Everybody can use the same team. So we're going to be a little hypothetical here and imagine that you could just put this player on any team at any given moment. But truth be told, if we're going to apply the same tiering logic to the NBA that we have in competitive Pokemon, we're going to have to create Ubers. We're going to have to create a ban list because truth be told, there are some guys in the league who are so good that they essentially remove competitiveness from games. Because think of it this way, any team that has that player will automatically have an increased likelihood of winning. Now I know that sounds like the most oversimplified explanation of talent levels that there's ever been, but in Pokemon, when you have a Pokemon that is so strong that it centralizes the metagame and essentially makes everything revolve around it, there are numerous occasions where that Pokemon is then banned because it simply removes a large wedge of competitive play from the tier. This has happened in every generation of Pokemon since Gen 1. Most recent examples of Pokemon getting banned, the Ruinmons, Qianpao, Chi-Yu, Super Crazy Iron Bundle, Super Crazy Delibird, Iron Bundle. There's been numerous Pokemon this generation who have started out in OU, and it's been pretty clear from early on that they were too good for it, and by the time banning came around, those Mons were inevitably kicked up to Ubers. So we'll start off the top with who I think is very clearly a longtime member of the Uber tier. In this case, he's essentially our Mewtwo, and that is none other than LeBron James. You could argue that LeBron James hasn't been quite at that level of meta-defining since, well, he definitely had some time in 2018 there. 2016 through 2018, he had a resurgence, you might say. That was the second period of his career where he should have been banned, but LeBron is so good that he probably should have been in Ubers this entire time. Beyond that, we have guys like Nikola Jokic, a two-time MVP, possibly on his way to being the first three-time repeat MVP since, Larry Bird? Nikola Jokic is so good that, again, think of it this way. If you could have Jokic on the floor in replacement of one of your players, almost 1,000 times out of 1,000, having Jokic there is going to increase your overall chances of winning. Now, I know you're saying, Zach, that's the whole point. You want to increase your chances of winning. No, in this case, we want everything to be competitive as possible. We want everybody to be playing on an equal playing field, and we don't want there to be somebody who's so good that they negate a large portion of the meta because of how good they are. You know who got banned to Uber, who arguably started out in like UUNU? Steph Curry. Are you kidding me? When they gave him the sniper ability to just hit that long ball, Uber automatically. So there's our first three entrants into the Uber tier: LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, and Steph Curry. I think it's fair to say we can add Giannis Antetokounmpo to that list, Kevin Durant to that list, Luka Doncic to that list. These are all guys that are so ridiculously good that, again, they almost remove the competitive nature from the game because the team that they're on inevitably becomes so good that it removes the ability of other teams to stay competitive. So I think you got the idea now, so let's talk about some movers over the last couple years. As you saw in the thumbnail, probably the most incredible jump this year was Lauri Markkanen going from arguably NU, possibly even PU, to O, solidified in the OU tier this year. I almost think of it like the beginning of Sword and Shield when the Crown Tundra had yet to release, and certain Pokemon were so dominant for the first time ever in ways they weren't able to simply because of the new environment, and that's exactly what Laurie has, a new environment to play in. And because of that, he's elevated his game from somebody who a lot of people definitely wrote off to a solidified all-star OU level player. But of course this goes both ways. In the same way you got guys like Laurie breaking into OU, you're inevitably going to have guys falling out of it. You're going to have guys who were all-stars one year who won't be all-stars the next year. In this very season, we have Andrew Wiggins, who was, while fringe in the meta, inevitably an all-star last season. Not this year. I don't think it was any question of, obviously he had the fan vote. If you have a slot on the roster in Golden State and you start like 50% of games, you're almost inevitably going to end up on the fan vote list. But I think we all realize that Wiggins, Dre, Kevon Looney, these guys weren't making the All-Star game. And that's not exactly a slight against them. It's just that they simply aren't that guy this year. Andrew Wiggins isn't quite playing at that same level simply because people understand his game, understand what he brings to the table, and they're able to account for it more and play to it in a stronger manner. Two more examples of individuals who have definitely made the leap to OU this year: Domantas Sabonis and Tyrese Halliburton. While in the previous years, Sabonis has shown us the example, or has shown that he can play at the level of an NBA All-Star, I don't think many people would have expected Reese to make the jump he has this year to be what he was averaging, like 26 and 11 at one point in the season. Both of these guys, no way they were OU before this season, but again, both of them have definitive spots in the metagame right now thanks to their new environment, their new situation that allows them to, they have teammates that suit their weaknesses better. They have overall better support that allows them to function at a higher level, just like having weather in competitive Pokemon allows certain Pokemon to be really good that wouldn't otherwise be great. If you have Sand Up and you have Sand Rush Excadrill, you're gonna absolutely dominate. If you don't have that Sand Up, Excadrill isn't gonna be the same defining presence that it was, in the similar way that certain guys aren't able to keep up every year and be OU year in and year out. Now, like anything, tiering is inevitably a community effort. It's not just one person who makes these decisions, so I want you to let me know down in the comments, who do you think deserves to be banned up to Ubers? Who do you think broke into OU this year? Who do you think fell off a cliff? So let me reel everything in real quick, because what have I done today? I've attempted to make the NBA more competitive by removing the best players in a similar effort to what the people do in competitive Pokemon, where if something is so good, you ban it. You get rid of it because it removes competition. Would this be good for the NBA? No. Are you kidding me? No, it would be awful for the NBA. That would be one of the absolute worst things that could possibly happen to the NBA. You know what makes professional leagues function? Faces, big names that people want to go see in the stadiums. People want to spend money on their jerseys. People want to have their posters in their room. People want to buy the McDonald's meal with their face on it. Shout out to Larry Bird. As much as I enjoyed this idea and I loved just kind of throwing it at the wall and seeing what stuck, this would be so bad for any professional sports league. If you take the NFL and you remove Patrick Mahomes, if you remove, Aaron Donald, if you remove TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, these guys who are so good that they would make any team anywhere that they're on better, who would go see games? Like, yeah, it's great if we end, within one score of every game, but if I wanted to see really competitive basketball or any sport for that matter, with no big name player, I could go to any college game. I could go to any high school game. I could go anywhere that isn't the professional leagues, because that is what makes them work. Faces. As annoying as it is for me, a Detroit Pistons / New York Giants fan, knowing that we don't have almost any meta-defining players on those teams at the moment, I have to still recognize that not having these dominant faces in the league would be awful for the final product. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Please go ahead and like, subscribe, comment. Those are all great ways and free ways to boost the channel, and I really appreciate it. And as per usual, my name is Zachary Taylor. Thank you for your time today.